I recently sat down with Matt Rector of Rector Guitars out of Baltimore, Maryland, and I knew from the onset that I was talking with an artist, not just a luthier who builds guitars and ukuleles, but a man who approaches his craft from an organic, manual, hands on approach with passion and joy. He uses his knowledge and abilities in the most manual sense with minimal power tools. And you know that when you get something constructed from Matt, that it's going to be a product of his joy and a product of his hands and labor. And there's something to be said about that in this high tech, mass production world of musical instruments, to know that there are builders out there like Matt. It was a complete joy to sit down and hear his story and hear about his techniques, what he's learned, what he is learning, and where he's going. I look forward to seeing his art and his career blow up in the future. Enjoy. Hello, Matt.
Hey, hello. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So I found you on Instagram, and I noticed that you build guitars and ukuleles.
Yeah, specifically, I have an interest in acoustic instruments, so um, mostly steel string acoustic guitars as well as ukuleles. And someday I'd like to try my hand at a mandolin, but the whole carved top thing is a little intimidating for me at this
It's
point.
neat, yeah, with the F holes and the solid, yeah.
Yeah,
And I need to learn how to pronounce it. It's ukulele.
yeah. Well, I guess I visited Hawaii this year, um,
Okay.
and so I got to visit the Kamaka ukulele factory,
Oh,
which was a
cool.
really cool experience. And so I figure I should try to pronounce it like the native Hawaiians do.
Absolutely. Did you take anything away? I mean, had you been building ukuleles before that, or
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
take anything away? Like, oh my gosh, I never knew about that, or this technique to do this.
Um,
Because you're a hand construction guy, and I'm sure that they probably have like a high manufacturing turnover kind of methodology.
yeah. So it did give me some perspective on scalability,
Hmm.
production, that sort of thing. I actually thought it was a pretty interesting business because um, they had told me that they only actually produce about 12 instruments a day. And
Wow.
for a, um, I guess, well-known around the world company, that's relatively small. You know, when you look at companies like, for example, Fender or Taylor guitars, I
Hmm.
mean, they're pumping out hundreds of guitar instruments a day.
Hmm.
So that was really surprising to me, and I was surprised by the amount of handwork that still went into a lot of those instruments. Um, they definitely
When you say handwork, what exactly is being done by hand that they just don't do with machinery?
so they definitely use CNC. They definitely use some automation, but most of the final assembly and like shaping of necks, things like that. I saw a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people doing all that. By hand. All the fret work is still done by hand, rather than
Okay.
like a Plek machine or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, and the finishing, that's still done by hand. They don't do like I mean, like they spray it, but like they don't have like a machine that sprays it for them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, each instrument is finished by one guy who sprays the finish, and um, yeah.
How did your journey start as a luthier? And did it start
Uh,
with guitars, or did it start with ukuleles, or?
it definitely started with an interest in guitars. So
Mhm.
I've been playing guitar since I was probably about 12. And at least, that's when I really got into it. And for me, I had an interest right away. Like I was a huge gearhead. This was back before, of course, the internet existed. You could shop online, but
Hmm.
um, I got like the catalogs from Musician's Friend and
Yeah.
you know places like that, and I would like spend hours looking at them and
Oh
studying
yeah.
them, and uh, that really got me interested in different gear and just sort of how they interact together,
Hmm.
um, and got me interested in how instruments are built. So I had my a few of my instruments set up, and when I went to the local luthier, I inquired a little bit about what a career like that would look like.
Where
And
where was local at, Matt?
so I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I grew up in actually a
Okay.
suburb called Marion,
Okay.
small little town. So I visited. It was West Music was the store, and the luthier at that store was pretty well known and respected in the area. And he gave me some advice on maybe different schools you can attend, that sort of thing. Um, but I actually didn't really get into that until you know more recently. I went to school. I did the whole. Um, I got a degree in marketing. I for me, I guess. Um, don't get me wrong. My parents have always been very, very supportive, but they want what's best for their kids. And then they
Sure.
think, well, is that really like a stable
Right.
career? Like that
Right.
sounds a little tough. Like you should go to
Sure.
college and get your 4-year degree. And
Sure.
so I did all of that, and I still had that itch, and it really came when the pandemic happened. Like a lot of people who kind of got
Yeah.
started,
Yeah.
I got laid off, and I had about 2 months where I was just sitting at home, and I said, "Well, why don't I try this?" I've had this interest for a long time. Like, let me give this a try, and just for fun, just for my own enjoyment, and see
Okay.
see where it goes. And I just discovered that I really, really enjoyed it. So
Did you dive
um,
into electric guitars first, or was it acoustic first, or
it was acoustic instruments first.
because it's a very different head, is it not?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I played electric guitar all my life.
Hmm.
But for I don't know why, just to me the construction of acoustic instruments just interested me more.
Sure.
So I started building ukuleles from like Stumac kits.
Okay.
That's how I got started first, which was a great way to start. And I wanted to try something smaller first before I sort of got into like acoustic guitar. I thought that would be a little bit easier.
Hmm.
Um,
Man,
but
I'll
yeah,
bet Stumac was firing those kits out the door during the
yeah.
pandemic like hotcakes,
Oh yeah, I'm
right?
sure. I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that they. I don't know if you saw, but Luthier's Mercantile, recently closed their
Went out of
doors.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
They
sure
had a
that
lot of good wood stock. Did you take advantage of those sales?
I didn't actually. No, I have
Mm.
too much of it already, and I think my wife would have probably killed me if I bought more. So
Someone else just went out of business. You know Crimson Guitars on YouTube
yeah,
out of England. He
yeah,
ran his own shop. It was vintage tools, vintage
okay,
woodworking tools, and he just posted a video like 2 days ago that all good things come to an end, and he had to shut that vintage
wow,
tool
no
shop. I
way.
know. So I logged in right away. I'd never heard of it. I'm like, I want a vintage tool chisel set,
Hmm.
and everything's sold out, and the domain is still there, but nothing.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
wow,
So, and it makes you wonder. I mean, great places like Luthier's Mercantile, uh, how how can they not stay in business?
yeah. I mean, it's such a niche thing. I guess I
It
think
is.
that that's both a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand, they don't have too many competitors. I mean,
Right.
there's Sumac, but on the other hand, I think that I guess I read the like the service announcement or whatever they kind of
Yeah.
gave out. And I think my understanding of the situation was that um, I don't think they were necessarily struggling, but
Okay.
the owners were sort of aging out and they wanted to retire,
Okay.
and finding the right person to pick up like a really niche business like that can be really challenging. I just don't think that
Yeah.
they really found a good buyer for it.
Ah, that's a shame. That's a shame. And they were based in California, right?
Oh,
If I
I'm not
remember correct.
actually sure. I That
I think
sounds
they
correct.
were. Yeah. Geez. And there's guys like, chomping at the bit to, I just want to open up my own store and I just need a little
Yeah,
capital investment. And it's a shame that stuff like that happens.
yeah, for sure.
So ukulele kits. And then when you got your first acoustic kit, did you start on a kit or did you just decide, you know what, I'm going to bend some sides and I'm going to just make one from zero, an
I
acoustic
did
guitar?
I did start from a StewMac kit.
Okay.
It was a dreadnought kit, and the
Ah,
bending of the sides really sort of intimidated me.
yeah.
That part sort of scared me at first.
How does StewMac do that on a kit with the bent sides? Does it come
They
they come pre-bent?
they come pre-bent,
Hmm.
and the way that they're packaged is they have like this. It's kind of interesting. They use these like rubber bands to keep it sort of like in tension
Oh,
um,
okay.
in the shipping, so that it doesn't like sort of like spring back and like flatten out
Sure.
again.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they come pre-bent, and but there's still a lot of assembly and things to do. It's just
Hmm.
most of your big pieces are already sort of to their relative final thickness.
Hmm. Hmm.
You just have to do all the assembly.
And you need to glue the bracing yourself. They
Yeah,
don't
you
they
gotta
don't do
glue.
that for you on the top.
Yeah, correct. You
Okay.
gotta glue your own bracing. They come with the braces like a generally sort of pre-shaped brace set.
Okay.
But if you want to like
Oh,
scallop your
joined,
bracing,
already cross joined and stuff, like a skeletal.
yeah, like
Okay.
so the structure's already there, but you have to like if you want to scallop the braces and things like that,
Hmm.
you have to do that yourself.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. The fine tuning of the structure and
Yeah,
shaving it
exactly.
down and getting all the nice details. So while you were doing that, you're looking at these parts going, I could construct my own side, I can construct my own neck. When did that turn happen? Like, you know what? I'm going to start doing it from zero.
Yeah. So actually, it was for a couple ukuleles that one I built for myself, and then another I built for my wife. So
Okay.
um, I had an interest in building instruments from woods that were not exactly traditional. I want to build from woods that are sustainable. So one of the things about a lot of the traditional quote unquote tone woods, like rosewood and mahogany, is they're from these tropical
Right.
areas, and
Right.
um, you hope that they're harvested in a sustainable way, but sometimes it's really hard to know. You don't necessarily know where that tree came from,
Right.
and as much as possible, I don't want to really contribute to
Hmm.
unsustainable or unethical or unethical timber farming.
Right.
So I had an interest in building from some different alternative wood. So that kind of prompted me where if I wanted to do that, I had bought them from a lumber supplier in Oregon,
Okay.
and they,
That's a good location for lumber.
yeah, exactly. So they harvest a lot of reclaimed wood from trees
Ah,
that are already downed, but they aren't going to bend the sides and do any of that stuff for you. So,
sure.
the necks just come as just like a chunk of wood,
Okay.
just a blank, and then you have to do all the shaping. And if you want to, depending on if you're cutting it all out of one piece, or if you're doing like a scarf joint for the headstock, you still have to do all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd buy like the rough billets of wood, but that's when I really had to learn. to do it myself because I wanted to pursue building from these types of wood that weren't necessarily available from places like StewMac.
Mm-hmm.
And, you couldn't get them in that sort of pre-bent setup.
Sure. Are they kiln dried when you get them, or do you have to deal with sap and remnants? Like, are they planed, dried from your lumber distributor?
That's actually a good question. I don't know if they're kiln or air dried, but
Okay. Okay.
they come ready to
Ready to
basically,
go.
process.
Okay.
So
I recently dove into a Telecaster. I'm going to make my first guitar. Pardon me for a second, Matt, while I grab it.
oh yeah.
And it's a Limba.
Oh yeah, it's a
Uh,
great wood.
yeah, it's heavy as heck. My God, this is
Yeah.
heavier than my Les Paul, and it's about 10 pounds easily.
Oh my
The body
man, yeah.
alone. So I'm going to put a belly bump on it, and I'm going to put the armrest
Yeah.
contour like my Stratocasters. But when I got it from the guy, he had epoxied, some of
Hmm.
these gaps in here and filled them in, and it started seeping out. And I thought it was sap,
Hmm.
right? And I thought maybe it was a commonality. So you don't run into any of those issues. The woods are pretty well done by the time you get them.
Yeah. I don't usually run into an issue with that. At least not from the supplier that I purchased from. And the stuff that I'm purchasing usually isn't gonna have like voids like that.
Okay,
Where, um, but I've seen that problem before. Actually, it's funny that you
that's
say that.
interesting.
Yeah. I've
And how do you
seen
solve something like that? Would sanding, I guess,
the
let it
only
dry before you start working on it. Just let it sit for a couple months.
the only other time I've really seen that is I've seen a workbench that had a big slab top and it had some checks in it that were filled that way with black
Uh,
epoxy.
okay,
And over time, it would sort of seep out. Like it'd just be a little proud of the surface, and you'd have to
sure.
just sort of plane it down
Okay,
every once in a while. So I would imagine you might want to wait before finishing a
okay.
little bit
Makes
to sort
sense.
of
It's like
let
my
it settle.
backyard fence. When the guy installed the backyard fence, he said, "Let it sit for about a year in the sun, go through all the climate changing, and then you can stain it."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
of course, I jumped the gun, and now I've got planks that are starting to warp, and so whatever.
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
So you said exotic woods, and you went to this Oregon
Hmm.
lumber supplier. What kind of exotic woods do you prefer, and what did you acquire?
Sure. So I really like myrtle wood. That was one of the first ones that I started with. And still really like. It's can be found domestically in places like Oregon.
Okay.
And it often has figure kind of like koa or like flamed maple.
Wow.
So I really like that a lot.
Is it pretty lightweight?
Yeah, it is
Hmm.
relatively lightweight. It reminds me, it actually, I think it's like in the sort of tree family, it's somehow related to koa. So it's pretty
Ah.
similar to koa.
And
Um,
how about the tonality? And is this for ukuleles or ukulele and acoustics?
Ukulele and acoustic guitars. Yeah,
Okay,
both.
because you don't hear about myrtle much in acoustics, or at least I haven't.
No,
Is there a
yeah.
reason for that?
Um, I think some of it is just tradition, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that I think musicians are an interesting bunch.
You're
You
telling
know,
me?
yeah,
Yeah, we know.
we,
We poke
yeah,
fun, but we know.
yeah. So, um, it's funny because when you think of companies like like Gibson guitars that are these heritage
Mhm.
brands. I would
Mhm.
actually hate to be in their shoes, because so many people complain about some of the maybe design flaws that exist
Mhm.
with their sort of traditional designs.
Mhm. Mhm.
Gibsons are notorious for their headstocks breaking off, right?
Right.
Um, but then if they try to fix it and change the
Oh,
design, people will be
oh
like,
God, what have
no,
you done? Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Build it like you built it in the 1950s.
That's right.
So
That's
it's
right.
like they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. So,
Yeah, it's tough. They're locked
um,
in. Yeah.
yeah. So I think some of it is tradition.
Hmm.
People want mahogany back and sides. People want
Okay.
rosewood back and sides.
Hmm.
And the reality is that there's still a plentiful enough, timber market for them to be able to do that in a scalable way that's, relatively inexpensive, I think.
Hmm.
So, um, trying to build instruments from woods that are maybe not less plentiful, but maybe less common for the way that they're processed that way.
Hmm.
Like finding a supplier who's going to be able to provide the same volume of that particular type of wood, I think is challenging when they already are set up for, this industry, and they, rely on these logging operations and that sort
Hmm.
of thing.
Hmm.
How do you test tonality of your woods? Do you have, and I'm sure the methodology is all the way down to putting sensors on it and running through an oscilloscope to tapping it with a wooden hammer or a metal hammer might get a different sound, or do you have your methodology that goes into and can we what was the name of your, is it Rector guitars and ukulele?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the tonality testing that the Rector method would use?
Honestly, I do a lot of the sort of tap tone thing, but I'm not gonna say that there's any magical answer.
Yeah,
It really depends a lot on the particular wood. I mean, I've worked with
sure.
pieces of myrtle wood that are, seem to be pretty dense and stiff, and
Oh,
then you'll get
okay.
another one that seems, pretty light and a little bit more
Hmm.
flexible. Wood is
Hmm.
a natural material, so I
Sure.
think that's one of the benefits of when you're building by hand is you can make adjustments. So if something's a little bit, if I think that maybe it's a little bit lighter weight, to compensate for that, I might not. When I thickness the plate, I might leave it just a little bit thicker than if it was a denser piece.
Okay.
And I might brace it, just slightly differently. I might not shave the braces down quite as thin if I think that, this piece needs a little bit more stiffness.
So it's an
Um,
organic process based on all the elements going into that one. Bracing is changing the top. I mean, when you say the plate, you meant the top of the guitar.
yeah,
Yeah.
or the back, the back
Okay.
panel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, either or, but the top is probably the most important, really, for that.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Are you experimenting with bracing and positioning? And you know what? This is like Martin just came out with their hollowed bracing.
yeah, I saw
And
that.
I bought a tailor online a couple of years ago, and they were bragging up and down about how this guy developed a new bracing method for the tops
The V
and
bracing, yep.
the V bracing. Thank you. Yeah. And I've never played an original Taylor, but I know this one sounds good.
Hmm.
And if I were to compare, I mean, would you get down to that science? So like, you know what? Let's add this X down here, and how would you handle that?
I'd like to. To be honest, I haven't experimented with that too much. Most of my
Okay.
bracing patterns are pretty traditional.
Okay.
At this point, I do pretty standard X bracing and
Okay.
pretty standard fan bracing on the ukuleles I build. And I guess
What's
for
a
me,
fan bracing, if you don't
so
mind
it's
me
like
asking?
it's kind of like in a classical guitar. So you have rather than like the braces sort of crossing over each other,
Okay.
like in an X, you have sort of like three individual it kind of looks like, like one of those sort of Asian fans. You have your bridge plate that might go across here, and then like the braces kind of come down like this, sort of like going out in like direction,
Almost,
sort of.
almost a 33 angle, maybe kind of a 40, not 45, but
No, definitely not 45. Yeah, like
okay.
maybe more kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I
And
couldn't tell
why,
you the exact angle off the top of my head.
sure, but why is that ukuleles and classical guitars need the fan bracing as opposed to the X bracing of an acoustic?
Part of it has to do with the tension of the strings. So
Ah, sure, sure.
yeah, a steel string acoustic guitar has a lot greater, the tension is much higher than on like
Makes sense.
um on a nylon stringed instrument, and in particular an ukulele with such a small scale length.
Sure.
So you tend to want to brace them lighter, and it allows for more vibration. Because if you did an X brace, like a heavy X brace sort of pattern on like a nylon string classical guitar, you'd likely end up with a really dead kind of sound.
Gotcha.
So classical guitars usually have anywhere from, it depends on the builder and the construction style, but most fan bracing is 3 to 5 braces. And then on ukuleles, it's usually 3
Okay.
for a pretty standard fan brace pattern. And they don't have the X with all the little cross braces and things
The
like
joints.
that. So
Yeah.
so it's a little bit lighter construction.
Do you use a standard wood pretty much for all the bracing, or does tonality come into play there?
Usually I use Sitka spruce for
Okay.
most of the bracing.
Okay. It's inexpensive, it's readily available, it's light, easy
Yeah,
to cut. Okay.
it's light, it's stiff. I've played around a little bit with cedar. I like that spruce is a little stiffer than cedar.
Okay.
So I tend to prefer that just for the
Gotcha.
way that I like to build.
When you do the tonality, is it what is it, a thump thump thump? I mean, and not being a maker myself, I always thought it was interesting to see these videos of guys holding up completed guitars and giving them nice thumps, and and they literally did have an oscilloscope off to the side, and they're and it's like, well, what are you going to do to it now that it's a finished guitar? What does that even matter? You know what I mean? It's this whole, I'm drinking the wine, and there's aromas of da 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 and notes of cigar smoke and whatever it is. It gets almost kind of, and I get it. I don't demean them at all, but there isn't anything you can do at that point, right?
Yeah. Well, I actually agree with you that it can be a little silly, honestly. I'm not that scientific about it. Really, I like to listen to how it sustains when I tap it and hold it up to my ear. So that's kind of what I'm listening for, is how long it sustains and how clear it rings out. I'm not tuning it to a specific note or anything like that. Some luthiers try to tune their top to like a specific
440A or something.
I'm not that scientific about it. But I just like to hear how it sustains. So if I'm tapping on it and I think, that sounds a little dead, like I want this to ring out a little bit longer, I might shave the braces down a little bit more to get it to be able to vibrate a little bit more. That's what I listen for. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I do believe that instruments are the sum of their parts, right? And that everything that you do to an instrument, in theory, affects the tone a little bit, right? But it's funny because like there are people who are like, well, I can hear the difference in the type of glue, and it's like, I don't know about that. Like, are you sure? Like, I'm not so sure about that.
Let's see. I used Elmer's woodshop glue on this one, but I used a double epoxy on this one.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of that stuff, I don't know, maybe people have better ears than I do, but some of that stuff I agree is it's like almost like magical,
Have you, the ukulele, and you mentioned scale earlier, are there different scales that you've played with the ukulele, or one standard scale that's your favorite go-to, or
So tenors are my favorite, just because that's what I
tenors?
like to play personally.
And what
Um,
scale is a tenor? What's the measurement on that?
Usually they're around 17 inches for the scale
Okay.
length.
Okay. And that's
Um,
a standard ukulele, is the tenor that you'll mostly see in a store hanging on the wall.
the ukulele that everyone thinks about is the soprano, or sometimes
Oh,
that's actually called the standard. And
oh.
that's like the tiny little like
Hmm.
ukulele that when you think of like the ukulele sound, like the iconic sound, that's what most people think of.
Gotcha.
Um, then there's the concert, which is a little bit larger. So the tenor is then just a little bit bigger than the concert. And all three of
Ah,
those are usually tuned to the same way. And
okay.
then there's the baritone, which is
Mm,
tuned kind of like a guitar,
mm.
um, which is even bigger.
Still four strings.
Yeah, still four
Okay.
strings.
Mm.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of variation in ukuleles. I've seen ones where they have courses, like doubled strings, like a mandolin. So
Oh,
like
wow.
kind of like a 12 string guitar.
Wow.
I've seen ones like that. I haven't built anything like that, but I've seen ones like that. And then the baritones, especially the sopranos, concerts, and tenors, tend to have somewhat kind of standardized sizes.
Mm.
The baritones, a lot of companies do their baritones a little bit different.
Have you experimented with piezo pickups or anything to that effect in your ukulele, or are you a purist? It's like the sound that it gets is the sound you're gonna, amplification at all, or
I haven't. Not that I'm opposed to it.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
in the instruments that I've built, I've just kept them purely acoustic. I'm not opposed to it if someone requested that.
Hmm.
Um, I like the K&K system a lot.
Oh, I've installed those and they're amazing. It's a great
Yeah,
system.
I like those. I like the LR bags systems.
The thing about
Um,
K&K that I had to laugh at, I ordered one for a client. It was the first one I installed, and I ordered it on Amazon. And it comes with the jig, with the hole in it, and a golf
yeah,
tee. And I went, they're keeping this one golf tee company in business because of their installation. You have to line it up in the.
yeah.
But worked like a charm in the installation. I mean, it seemed daunting at first, but it's a great system. I liked it.
Hmm.
It covered the various positions on the bridge, which as opposed to a bar going across,
Hmm.
standard old fashioned piezo. It just seemed like a great system.
Yeah, I like that they're pretty minimally invasive and
Hmm.
that they're pretty electronically simple. Like there's not too much to mess around with. I tend to
Hmm.
like simplicity in my gear and setup. It's I don't know. It's interesting as I've gotten older.
Is
I
that
guess.
purism? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've just come to like simplicity in a lot of stuff like that.
When you were a electric player, was there a genre that you went to, and were you an effect? Because you said you were a gearhead, so I've got 3 different amplifiers. I've got an effect board with 10 different pedals. Were you that kind of guy? Like,
So, yeah, I definitely played a lot of like blues and classic rock, and played in a cover band.
yeah,
Um, and I had a few different amplifiers and handful of guitars, and I've sold some of that stuff and
yeah, yeah,
um, scaled back on that. I think some of that maybe comes with maturity of just as a musician. I think as you improve as a musician, skill sort of can replace some of the
absolutely.
skill can replace some of the things that or just experience, knowing how to use the gear to the best of its abilities and maximize what it can do. I think some of that can sort of replace all the gadgets.
Yeah, it's almost and God help the person in the guitar world that's got FOMO, because if you have fear of missing out, you're just gonna, I mean, there are plenty of times where I'd be on sweetwater.com going, oh, I want that and I want that, and then my credit card's sitting in
Yeah,
my wallet just whimpering like,
it's
really,
limited edition. I
you
have
need
to get it.
another guitar? Yeah, right. You need
Yeah,
another guitar?
yeah,
And is that
yeah.
pedal really why can't you just be happy with the reverb can and your Fender amp? Do you really need a reverb pedal with, it's,
Hmm.
you just have to stop eventually and go, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right, Matt, in that tone is, yes, you're chasing tone, but adding effects and layers of an onion, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I read an article about 10 years ago on Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstrat, and was
Mm,
blown away that it was one pickup, one volume knob,
yeah.
and just and he is, in my opinion, and I'm a huge Hendrix fanatic too. Uh, and hearing that Angus Young played with one guitar and a Marshall stack, that was it. And they
Yeah.
made amazing albums and got incredible tone. And they didn't have to layer all this crap on.
Hmm.
It's and thank goodness, because it's easier to replicate tunes no matter where you
Hmm.
are.
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
So, do you prefer ukuleles or acoustics?
Oh, I'm more of a guitarist, so
Okay.
I would say I prefer, if I had to pick one, it'd be acoustic guitars. But
To play.
yeah, to play,
Okay.
and probably to build.
I gotcha.
But I don't know. I guess I think the ukulele is such a fun, lovable instrument and so approachable, and that's what I really love about it. And it's just like anything else. I mean, I think that mastering the basics of ukulele are maybe a little bit easier than guitar, but it's certainly not just like a for fun instrument. It's a serious instrument. I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can have like, it brings to mind the recorder. You can
Yeah,
have someone playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, or you can have literally a recorder sitting in a symphony and fitting right in.
yeah,
It's
yeah. Interestingly, I actually read somewhere that a lot of classical music for the flute was written before we had our modern flute, and
mm,
it was basically a recorder. So like
mm.
that was the flute of that bygone era. So um, yeah, it's we think of it as like a instrument that kids learn to play and squeak and squawk on in
Yeah,
in
yeah.
school. But I watched a video that it made me laugh a little bit because again, in my head I'm like, you know, that's what I think of when I think of that instrument. But it was like this crazy classical arrangement for recorder, and the skill was just incredible.
How do you see the industry changing, Matt? Do you see the industry? It is changing. I
Yeah,
mean, 3D printing, has become a very accessible thing. It's not beyond anyone's wallet anymore. CNC, same thing.
hmm,
Guys are cutting guitars and parts uh, until the cows come home.
yeah,
There's libraries of if you need something printed, you can find a particular item. Someone will print for you, ship it
hmm,
to you. And as I'm asking that question, and we can go back to the question, how is the industry changing? But I think it's kind of that layered technology and almost too much, and getting back to basics.
yeah.
And is that what separates a Rector guitar from, say, a Taylor? It's like, you know what, this was built by hand by me.
I I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So I really have an interest in historic woodworking, and not just in my instrument building, but in
Hmm.
woodworking in general. I use a lot of antique tools that I've restored, and I do a lot of things by hand. So I actually thickness my tops with a hand plane.
I
Um,
saw one of your posts the other day where you walk into the shop and you grab the plane on this giant chunk of wood and you're just going to town on it. And I'm like, he doesn't have an electric planer. He can just feed that through. And I was actually really impressed. I mean,
yeah, that
it
was
brought to mind like how they used to make canoes, where they just
yeah.
grind it out by hand. It was really intriguing to watch.
Yeah, that was for a workbench that I built. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, I really like using traditional woodworking methods, and trying to keep as much of the skill in my hands and not outsourcing it to a machine. And I don't have to be clear, I don't have anything against machine production. In fact, I think it's a great time to be a musician and a guitarist because you can get a great instrument that's pretty inexpensive.
Hmm.
And a lot of that is because we have these methods of production that are scalable and that
Hmm.
um, you know are able to be done in a efficient way. So I'm not trying to say I have anything against um, machines or anything like that. I'm actually the vice president of a local makerspace here in Baltimore, and I have access to like CNC and things like that.
Oh, wow.
Um, but I don't typically use any of that stuff. I do on my instruments at least.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I guess I got started with that because I lived in an apartment at the time. And so for
Sure.
me, I didn't have the machines weren't an option for me.
Right.
And I got into it actually not out of some romantic notion of like, oh, I love old timey things. It was because this is what worked for me in my space. But then I would say I kind of fell in love with it and, really came to appreciate what goes into doing things by hand. And I think that's a buzzword that is thrown around a lot just by craftsmen in general. Oh, it's handcrafted, it's handcrafted. Well, what
Hmm.
does that really mean? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's hard to really define what that really means. And
Hmm.
when I say that, an instrument of mine is handcrafted, I really want to be able to believe that.
Absolutely. I get it. Yeah, because handcrafted could mean here's my index finger on my hand and I'm pushing a button to turn on the CNC machine. There,
Yeah.
handcrafted. Tell me about the makerspace. And do you know other luthiers in your area that utilize that facility, or what's that all about?
Yeah. So there's one other guy there, but I actually haven't gotten to meet him. I guess our schedules are just at different times. So when I'm there, he's usually not. There's one other guy there who builds mostly electric guitars, I think.
Okay.
And then there was a guy in the past who used to be the president actually, and he built electric guitars, but he's moved away. He moved away last
Ah,
year, so he's not an active member there anymore. So it's just me and another guy
building guitars.
building guitars there. At
Okay.
least, yeah, there are all kinds of people doing all kinds of stuff there. But as
And
far as
and
I'm
what is
aware,
it? Is it like a hub of tools and facilities that artists can come in and utilize on a subscription basis, or how does that
yeah.
work? Yeah.
So it's a member run nonprofit. You pay for a membership. I think it's pretty minimal. It's $50 a month.
Wow.
And if you become a member, you get a key and you get 24/7 access.
Wow.
So there is a woodshop space with your typical tools: bandsaw, table saw, drill press,
Wow.
jointer, planer. Um, there's a CNC. There's a laser cutter, 3D printer. Um, there's various like electronics equipment like soldering and
Oh, okay.
the Baltimore Node actually started as like a hacker space. So there's like some people who do like robotics and computer programming type stuff there. I
Hmm.
don't know anything about that or anything about the equipment for that because I've never used any of that stuff.
Hmm.
But I know that it exists there.
Sure.
Um, but
Wow.
yeah, most
What a cool idea.
yeah, it is cool. There's actually quite a few in the Baltimore area. Maryland has a really big like initiative program for maker spaces.
Oh, wow.
Um, so that's kind of a cool thing about, I guess, the state. And then I'm seeing more and more places like that pop up around like the country. Like I just was curious and I looked up in my hometown and like in different places in Iowa where I lived, like if there were any. And I'm seeing, that more and more of these types of places are popping up. So yeah, kind of a cool idea.
Well, I'm sure during the pandemic, were there issues with the makerspace? Were you at that level yet where you were using it, or?
So I wasn't involved yet at that time
Yeah.
when
Okay.
when it was really like when it's the heyday of the pandemic and
Yeah.
everything
The
was shut
heyday.
down, right? Like,
The heyday.
yeah, I
That's a
mean, it's
way of.
not like it's funny because people talk about it like it's over, but like it
Yeah.
still exists, like,
It does.
you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
the time period where we didn't know a lot about it and there's a lot of
Right.
fear,
Yeah.
revolving around it, and we
Yeah.
didn't have a vaccine yet and things like that.
Right.
At that time I wasn't involved yet in that. So
Okay. Okay. So I'm sure that it was an empty place for a long time.
I do think it was tough. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it was a tough time for the organization. It's based on what some of the other members have told me.
Right. Right. What kind of insurance do they have? I mean, if you get all these people coming in, yeah, $50, and I'm gonna. Whoops! I chopped my thumb off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um,
How
that's a
do they
great
prevent
question.
that? It's just.
Yeah. So you definitely have to sign a waiver before you
Sure.
become a member. And we require our members to check off what tools like that they are trained on,
Okay.
that sort of thing. And just a general liability of like, they're not going to, that the Baltimore node is the name of the makerspace, that we're not liable. Um, so there's that. There's also like you can do different trainings and safety trainings with someone like a member who is experienced on that equipment if you're trying to learn. The other day I helped someone who'd never used like a palm router before.
Okay.
So, I showed them how to do that and how to operate it safely. Um, so yeah, general liability waiver, but we do, carry insurance, of course.
Okay. Okay. So back to the handcrafted aspect, Matt. I'm really fascinated by it. It's the inlays. Uh, what do you have, like a drill that you go down into the fingerboard just a certain level and cut the inlay? I mean, it's just a fascinating process, I'm sure.
Yeah, I use a hand drill, like one of those like egg beater style drills for
Yeah,
that.
sure. Yeah,
And I find that it actually gives me more control than like a power drill for something like that, something so delicate like that.
gotcha.
Um, for the sort of standard dot inlays, that's something I'm trying to learn more about now is um, doing fancier inlays. That's something I want to incorporate. I'm not like a huge blingy guitar type of person,
Hmm.
but I do want to learn to do like inlay my logo and things like that,
Cool.
and maybe do a little bit more intricate fretboard markers of some kind.
Hmm.
Um, One of the cool things is my 9 to 5 job is I work for a jewelry company, but that gives me access to like some tools and materials that I can get a hold of, that maybe you'd have a harder time getting, I guess, otherwise.
Hmm.
But a jeweler's workbench is like the right setup for doing inlay work.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, especially the dots on the side of the fretboard. And I mean, that's
Hmm.
like.
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
How do you keep the drill level as you're drilling down? I'm sure. I mean, that's a rocky
Hmm.
prospect.
Um,
Just sheer will.
I think keeping it level is not that hard. The thing that's the most challenging is just
Mhm.
getting in space so that everything lines up perfectly.
Sure.
So, um, I find that with like an egg beater drill, it's pretty easy. Your hands are capable of feeling more than I think a lot of people realize. Kind of
Okay.
like what we were talking about with, um, developing that skill. When you're holding like a hand drill, you can feel um, kind of when it's vertical. I mean the balance of it because it's kind of tall, so you can kind
Hmm.
of feel the
Hmm.
balance of where it's at and get an idea of whether or not you're going straight down. But what I do to make sure that they're spaced out exactly correct is I mark everything out very, very carefully. And then I take a little awl and I poke a little hole first where I want to drill. And then I go with the drill, and then I actually go in reverse first just to get the hole started. It gives me like a clean entry. And then I go, I guess, forward. But yeah, drilling, poking the little hole first makes a huge difference in getting the alignment correct.
Yeah, I figured that out on a set of tuning peg holes in a headstock. And
Yeah,
I saw a guy online say go in reverse, then allow yourself to, well, not hand cranking, but automatic.
yeah.
But have you ever had a chance to sit down with an Obi-Wan Kenobi and let me show you, Matt? Here's how you do a hand. Who was it and where was it and when? And
So I'm lucky that I had family who were pretty handy. My grandfather taught shot glass back in the day when that was something that was offered. But I worked at a repair shop for a local shop here in Maryland called Appalachian Bluegrass Shop, and they focused on acoustic instruments. So I did repair work there, and I didn't build there, but my mentor there was someone who had really been doing this for like 40 years, doing repair for 40 years. And he actually was involved early on in Taylor guitars before anyone even knew what Taylor guitars was. So he never worked for them, but he was one of their first dealers. And when they were developing their products early on, they would actually send him stuff and have him, say, change this, or, this is good. Or so he was one of the few guys in town that could repair Taylor's UV cured finishes. I think that those it's a fantastic way of finishing instruments. So a lot of people don't know or think you can't repair those finishes very easily. You just have to have the right equipment and know how to do it, just like anything else. But he was very, very skilled in repair, and he was definitely my mentor and helped improve my skills just as a general luthier and guitar tech.
are you able to tap his brain every so often with questions as you go on this journey of construction?
Yeah, so I still am able to keep in touch with him and go in and use the tools in the shop anytime I want.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
He really needed someone who could be full-time, and I was part-time, and I couldn't really afford to go down to like an apprentice's salary. But it was still a good relationship, left on good terms and everything. It was just he needed a full-time guy. So he told me that I'm welcome to come use the tools anytime I want. And so sometimes if he has something I need, or I just need some expertise or advice on something, I can always give him a call and he'll help me out.
Very cool. So Matt, when you complete a guitar, is it to order, or have you created some inventory? Do you have a website that you? I think it's Rector Guitars and Ukuleles, or ukuleles.com, right?
I own the domain for rectorguitar.com.
Okay.
And I haven't really developed a website yet. That's kind of the next thing I need to do is
cool.
I need to get a website up, and right now I've just built instruments mostly for either people in my circle, someone I know, or a friend of a friend. It's mostly just been word of mouth, but I'm getting to the point now where I don't really have any instruments in inventory, but I want to start doing that. The instruments that I have built have been, I guess, commissions, if you will.
Sure.
So I don't have any like built up inventory, but I do want to start doing some of that. And
Cool.
offering them for sale on like a website or something like that.
Cool, cool. So could someone reach out to you on Instagram and place an order today?
Absolutely. They could reach
Yeah.
out on Instagram or
What's your handle on Instagram?
it's just Rector Guitar, just all one word, all lowercase.
Rector, Rector Guitar. And so if someone did, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if someone did place an order for an acoustic guitar, what would be the process there? Would they say, I would like this and that wood for the, I mean, how customized would you get? Like, look, I've got these woods available, choose from that. I've got this of it, you know what I mean? Gold hardware only,
Yeah.
or how would that process work out?
I mean, really sky's the limit. You
Cool.
know, the only thing is really, really intricate inlays. Again, like I said, that's something I'm trying to get better at or learn more
Cool.
about.
Cool.
That I really wouldn't have experience with. So if you wanted some sort of crazy inlay, I'd probably have to outsource that sort of work to like an inlay artist.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, in terms of wood combinations, binding, rosette, things like that, I could pretty much do whatever people wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's the cool thing is I can work with them to really make it their instrument and something that is totally tuned to them as a musician.
And did I notice on your Instagram account, do you laser etch, or do you have a wood burner and you got your logo on the body, on the inside body and through the sound hole there?
In the inside, I have just like a old school branding iron.
It looked like it because there was
Yeah.
a lot of seeping burn, and it looked
Yeah.
really cool that way. Looked
Yeah,
super
so
cool.
I think that's kind of neat. And then on the headstock, I have like a really thin decal that I clear coat over. So
How do you do rosettes? That's got to be one of the most difficult things to pull off?
um, it can be it's time consuming. Yeah. Um, Depends on the pattern. I mean, so a lot of times you can buy the marquetry sort of already like assembled in a strip. That's pretty simple if all you have to do is sort of bend it and inlay it. If you have to make your own marquetry, I haven't done that yet.
Mm.
That's really hard. Um, the I like doing a lot of like solid wood binding and solid wood rosettes. I try to keep as much plastic out of my instruments as possible.
Sure.
Again, with the sustainability thing,
Mm-hmm.
I try to think about what happens to the instrument at the end of its life cycle. We like to think that people will treasure our creations and they'll be around forever, but eventually it's going to return to the earth someday.
Sure.
And so I like to use wooden bindings and
Nice.
marquetry and things like that. So have you ever seen those like circular rosette cutters?
No.
Yeah, so there's this tool that you drill a hole and that becomes your referencing. Like you put a little pin and then that becomes your reference. And then you rotate this cutting tool around so it creates a circle. So
Okay.
you can use that to actually create the different concentric circles for the rosette, and then you can take a chisel and like very carefully chisel it out, and you can actually take
Wow.
a router plane then
Whoa.
to like then level the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wow.
and then
Woof.
yeah, so that's kind of intensive, but then you can actually use that same circular tool to actually cut the rosette itself. So then you cut that piece of wood out, then you inlay it,
Wow.
and plane it down flush.
Do you do binding on your guitars? Probably not on your ukuleles, but on your guitars.
I do. I like to do it on the ukuleles too. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I like to use various solid woods for that. Yeah.
Okay. How about the tuning pegs on the ukuleles? Are they wooden or are they metal?
The ones I've done are metal, but that's something I think I'd like to switch because on such a small instrument, it tends to make the instrument a little top heavy.
Weighty. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's actually something I want to maybe find a different type of machine head for that.
that'd be cool. And make them
Yeah.
out of wood.
Yeah, I've seen ones like that, but I haven't done that myself.
Wow. You know, my wife plays cello, and cello tuning
Okay.
pegs are wood on wood. And
Yeah.
it's just this grinding. Now, granted, they've got the fine tuners down at the tailpiece,
Hmm.
but it's just she has to use both hands to just bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang, and you're just waiting for that string to pop off. And I don't know how that wood on wood even just stays in place. It's sheer physics. I have
Yeah.
no clue how they do it.
Yeah, it's scary when you're tuning it and it's like, oh God, is this string gonna snap in my face?
That's right. Exactly.
For me, I think that having the repair experience gave me a better idea of what I like in terms of how instruments are constructed. I was able to see some of the pros and cons of different construction methods when
Good
I'd see
point.
an instrument that came in and, oh, like this style of, construction tends to have an issue with this, right? Or like
Right.
this is easier to adjust the truss rod on this guitar because of this. That sort of thing. And so it gave me a better idea of what I want to see in my own instruments. Um, so I think that it's definitely valuable because I think sometimes you have all these builders who I talked a little bit about my more traditional like sort of approach to bracing. And not that there's anything wrong with experimentation. I think it's good. I think people should try new things, but
Absolutely.
sometimes I think people are trying to reinvent the wheel for the sake of being different.
Right.
And I think it's important that if you are doing something, it has to add value somehow. It has to create a net positive for the instrument.
Sure.
And if you're just doing something for the sake of it being different, then I don't think that's a good enough reason. I think that it's okay if it's different, but it has to, improve the instrument somehow.
Guitar Garage Talk is brought to you by YourGuitarMechanic.com. Setups, repairs, restrings, and more. Whatever your guitar or bass needs, we can get it done. Offering pickup and delivery service in the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. YourGuitarMechanic.com. Now, back to the program.
What are your suggestions for aspiring luthiers?
So I guess one of the things that I would recommend is stop overthinking things, and spend more time doing. If I want to be poetic about it, I would say, lay down your thoughts and awaken your hands. And you can think about lutherie and you can talk about lutherie and you can discuss it on an online forum and you can read about it and you can plan how you're going to do it, but you're making a physically tangible object. Or if you're even just repairing, you're working on a physically tangible object. And until you do it, you haven't actually done anything. So, not that reading and learning is a bad thing. That's great. But there's only so much to be learned, at least in this sort of craft, from that. So I would say that you should be spending at least 80% of your time doing, and 20% of your time can be, reading or whatever. The other thing too is that one of the great things today about the information that's available, even from 10 years ago, the information that's out there on the internet that's available to luthiers today or new builders, there's a lot of stuff that I relied on heavily to get going, that were online resources. That's great. But on the flip side, sometimes it's overwhelming because now it's to a point where there are so many different ways of doing things. And you ask a question on like a forum or something and 10 guys answer, they'll all give you 10 different answers. And that can leave you more confused than when you first started, to ask the question. So
very good point.
I would say, pick a way that makes sense to you,
Mhm.
and then once you've done that, try it, and don't waste too much time thinking anymore about it. If it doesn't work, then guess what? You'll find out pretty quick that
Yeah.
it doesn't work. But at least you haven't spent, extra time beyond that thinking about it, and then realizing then later that it doesn't work. It's
Right.
better for you to fail fast and figure out quickly what doesn't work for you than to think about something for an extended period of time and then still find out that that thing doesn't work for you.
Did you find that you fell into that trap when you started out?
Oh, yes.
Like information paralysis almost, right?
Yes, that was, I tend to be a perfectionist, so that was a
Mhm.
challenge for me. I would analyze like every possible way of doing something, and, or the tools. That's another thing is, all these luthier companies, they're great companies, but of course they want to sell you every tool they can.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you can do a lot of stuff with a pretty basic kit, but people like, think, oh, I got to have every specialized jig and every, you know, all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
you're better off spending more time developing skill than buying. You can't buy your way into good craftsmanship.
Very good point. Being a perfectionist is, and I'm an artist first and foremost. We've been in commercial design for many decades of my life, and well, like my sister-in-law, she wants to be a painter, but she's a perfectionist, and it gets to the point where, and it's tough because when you work in an organic form, especially you with your hand tools, and you're not going to get precise results, but you embrace that. So there's a whole duality of I'm a perfectionist, but I want to embrace the organic aspect of every guitar is different. It's going to be unique. It's going to be made by my hands, which are flawed. They're not perfect machines. You're going to have idiosyncrasies between guitars and ukes, if you will. It's a hard duality to fight with, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is.
But at the same time, you could probably channel that energy and perfect your craft, maybe.
Yeah. I guess when someone asks, well, what's the best instrument you've built? I always say the next one. It's like everyone's a little bit better, right?
I love that. That's good. I printed out a picture of Speedy Gonzalez's cousin, Slowpoke Rodriguez. I think that's his name. And I don't know if you know him or not from the Warner Brothers cartoons. He's got a Stratocaster on his shoulder, and next to it says "Speed kills." Slow down, be patient. No, and that's what I'm sure you embrace. That it's almost like a Zen thing, where you just become one with the wood, the hand drill, the inlay, the fretwork. It's a cool Zen kind of a thing if you want it to be.
Yeah, it is almost meditative, I would say.
And I'm sure the end result instrument, when it's done, resonates an energy that you put into it, and that's pretty cool. What's your favorite tool? I always ask the repair specialists, like, oh, the fret rocker, or someone said, I love my calipers, or my digital caliper. What would your favorite tool be?
So I guess since I really love antique tools, I have a Stanley 603 hand plane. It's a smoothing plane. So
is that the one is that the one that you were using on that workbench top on your Instagram?
A similar one,
okay.
Yeah, not the exact one. So the one that I was using on the Instagram, I have set up to do more rough work. But the one that I'm talking about is for like really fine. You can use it to give the final. You don't even have to sand. You can use it to give the final surface finish.
Is that one of those little hand deals, like a one-handed kind of?
No, it has like a handle and a knob, so it's you use two hands. But it's the traditional smoothing plane was like a number 4 size, and the 3 is just a little bit smaller.
How do they size planes? When I say a 4 or a 3, what is that measurement?
So that's in reference to Stanley's numbering system
Uh-huh.
because they were the ones who really popularized the metal hand plane. Um, so what they have anywhere from the standard bench planes go anywhere from 1 to a number 8, and 8 being the largest, 1 being the smallest. 1 and 2 are basically, I would call them more toys or novelties.
Okay.
They're particularly rare and collectible. 3 and 4 are
Oh.
considered your smoothing plane. 5 is like a jack plane or like a 4 plane. 6 could also be considered a 4 plane, and then your 7 and 8 are your jointers. So you can think of it as coarse, medium, fine. So your number 5 and 6 traditionally was used to do coarse work, remove a lot of material, get things roughly, remove rough sawing marks, get things relatively flat. They're sort of a medium length. Then you come in with the really long ones, the 7 and the 8, the jointers. Because they have such a long bed, it gives you a long reference surface so you can get something really perfectly flat. And then the shorter ones are actually what give you your final finish. You come in with like your smoothing plane, and they're just meant to take really, really thin shavings, but leave this pristine, smooth surface.
Nice.
And I like the 603 because it's a little smaller. A lot of instrument work is smaller scale.
Okay,
So,
sure.
I find that size works really well. And I'm not a particularly big dude. So the ergonomics of it just feel really good for me.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
How would I approach the body contours that I want to put on this guy? Because I saw a dude online with a rasp, and he just went to town on it and then eventually smoothed it out. Of course, he had his guidelines, that he drew out, and he kept it in that. And I saw another guy get his bandsaw and cut it out in chunks and get his chisel and chisel it out and then sander it. What do you think would be the approach on a limbo?
So if I was doing that by hand, I would mark out on the side, like where you want the contour to like follow, like on the like how deep you want it to go.
Sure.
And then
Okay.
on the back, I would kind of mark the same thing. Like kind of the line of where you want it to go. Yeah. And then from there, what I would do is I would take a handsaw and make a bunch of small cuts down to those lines. And then use a chisel to remove the bulk of the waste. Because if you try to just do it with a rasp, I mean, you can do it, but if you can chisel out a lot of the chunks first, it goes a lot faster. So
Sure.
I would do that first, and then I'd come in with like the rasp and the files and the shaping tools, and then smooth out what's there, and then sand it and make it nice and perfect.
And when it comes to chiseling, of course, keep a nice angle, like not too deep, and start hammering inside. Just little bits, right? Just
go shallow. You don't want to, because wood can be unpredictable in how
that too.
the grain. So one thing, if you hold up the body one more time,
Okay.
I would make sure that you're chiseling. Yeah, like if you hold it so it's sideways, I would make sure that you're chiseling, like from the widest part of the body, from the lower bout, towards the waist, and then back from like the upper bout towards the waist, going inward.
So away from the meat of off of the body, from the middle towards the edge.
Yeah, because if you're going from the middle, from the edge towards the middle.
Yeah.
Because if you're going from the middle towards the edge, what can happen is you can catch a bit of the grain and just chip out a chunk.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I would go from the outside edges in towards the center as you do that. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So saw out the areas, getting ready to take them out, and then come from the edge and start.
Well, I would go across the grain.
Okay.
but like from the outside edges of the body towards, like from the
Across the
top and
ground.
bottom. Yeah,
Gotcha.
top and bottom towards the middle.
Wow. Good suggestion, man. This is good. Speaking of patience, and I can't wait to find out. Once I get all the electronics and the guts in this thing wired up, I can't wait to find out if it actually plays well.
Yeah.
Because I've seen too many times people on Facebook Marketplace project guitar for sale.
Yeah,
Because they
yeah.
just failed miserably.
Yeah, you see that a lot. Yeah.
Oh, Matt, thanks again, man. I appreciate your time. Well,
feel
Matt,
like
I don't want to take up too much more of your time. People can find you on Rector Guitar on Instagram. Your handle is Rector Guitar.
Mhm.
And as soon as your website's up and running, you can place an order on Instagram.
Yeah, just reach out to me.
Cool. Very cool. And so I ask everyone, builders, collectors, players, repair specialists, the same question at the end of every episode. What 3 guitar tunes would you put on your Desert Island mixtape?
Sure. I did think about this a little bit. So I'm a Hendrix fan like you. So
Oh, cool. Very cool.
I'm gonna say Little Wing. That would be on there.
Great choice. My uncle chose that in my very first episode.
Okay.
Yeah,
I listened to a couple of your episodes. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be on there.
Fantastic choice.
I think Comfortably Numb. By
Yeah, I'm
Pink
a huge
Floyd.
Gilmore fan. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love how tasteful that solo is.
It's such a sad song.
Yeah.
You really feel, I mean, if you've seen the movie and you see it in kind of a visual context and you know the story of what he was going through, it's a really, really sad song. A sorrow to it that just, wow. Not many bands touch on that kind of atmosphere like Pink Floyd does.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You feel that one in your soul for sure.
Yeah.
I think for the last one, I would say Capriccio Arabe by Francisco Tárrega.
Beautiful.
Yeah, when I was in college, I was a music major for the first couple of years.
Oh, wow. And your instrument was guitar?
Yeah. So
oh, fantastic.
I studied a bit of classical, and going into it, I really didn't have an interest in classical and jazz. But that experience definitely gave me appreciation for that. And yeah, I have to throw like something in there that's strictly like classical or acoustic, I think.
Well, do you have any favorite concerts? Any musicians that you've seen live? Like, I always regret that I'll never see Hendrix live.
I had someone at my workplace tell me that their first concert was Hendrix.
Wow.
Was a Hendrix concert, yeah, and that blew my mind. But
wow,
I think for me, I got to see B.B. King.
Me too.
Yeah, and that's someone I'm definitely glad I got to,
just
see
a
perform.
wonderful show. Absolutely, there with you. I saw him in Anchorage, Alaska when I lived there, and it was 1995. And there was a lady sitting next to, and you could tell he was getting up there in age because he was sitting for most of the show. He had a stool out there. And this lady, when did you see him? What year?
It was actually at the Crossroads. I think it was 2000. I think it was 2008 at the Crossroads Blues Festival in Chicago.
Nice.
I was in high school at the time. And,
so you saw Clapton and you saw Robert Cray probably. And
yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, saw all those guys. Johnny Winter.
Nice. Before he passed. Wow.
Yeah,
that's a rare treat.
Yeah.
So this lady sitting next to me, she was decked out in her Sunday best. I mean, a hat with flowers on it, beautiful dress, matching sky blue shoes. And she had her program and she's like, oh, baby, and just like fanning herself up. And when he went into The Thrill Is Gone, she was just lost.
Yeah.
Baby, baby. It was so cool. It was so
That's
cool,
great.
man. And he has that one horn player. I wish I could remember his trumpet player, but the dude was constantly moving on stage and twirling his trumpet in his hand. Great show, man. Great show. Thank you so much again for joining me. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I I appreciate you just giving me a chance to share about myself. And
I
yeah.
look forward to seeing your creations on Instagram, man. It's your account is one of those. It resonates natural, hands-on artisan work, and I truly do like what I see. And
Thanks.
I wish you the very best of luck, man. Definitely.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. And, thanks for having me on. I think you're. I just wanted to comment that shelf you've got in the back. Is that a guitar that you turned into
It was
a shelf?
it was an old Ibanez that I got at a pawn shop. Had really bad issues, and I finally one day just got the handsaw and just the jigsaw, and it was making the most god awful noise because it was resonating through the body.
Oh
Just
yeah.
this awful sound of a guitar dying. And so I just stripped it off and threw a couple shelves in there, and
That's cool.
so I've got my Jimi Hendrix figurine in there. So that's kind of my
super cool.
reminder to, you know, if it's not going to be a guitar, it'll be something else. Well, peace out, Matt. I really do appreciate your time, man. You take good care, and I'll be in touch.